Australia Day is the official name for the country's national holiday. Foundation Day is also known as Anniversary Day, ANA Day, Invasion Day, or Survival Day. The commemoration's significance has been contested and evolved over time. According to research, the first human habitation on the Australian continent occurred around 65,000 years ago. The ancestors of Aboriginal Australians arrived on the continent via land bridges and sea crossings from Southeast Asia. Lake Mungo is the oldest archaeological evidence of human remains in Australia, dating back around 41,000 years. Aboriginal Australians were hunter-gatherers prior to European contact. Their societies are complex, with a rich culture and a sustainable economy based on seasonal horticulture, fishing, and trade. The meaning and significance of Australia Day have evolved over time. Captain James Cook claimed and explored New South Wales for the British in 1770. Following the loss of the 13 colonies in North America, the British sought out other parts of the world to serve as penal colonies. The First Fleet, comprised of 11 ships and led by Naval Captain Arthur Phillip, sailed from England to New Holland on May 13, 1787. In January 1788, they arrived at Botany Bay on the coast of New South Wales and discovered that the area was unsuitable. Captain Phillip and a few of his officers traveled to Port Jackson in the same month in search of a more suitable settlement. The landing site was named Sydney Cove after the first Viscount Sydney. Phillip returned to Botany Bay on January 23 and ordered his fleet to move to Sydney Cove. After a 2-day delay caused by bad weather and the French ships Astrolabe and Beauséjour, the HMS Supply, carrying Phillips, some crew, and approximately 40 convicts, set sail for Sydney Cove. Despite the difficulties, all remaining British ships made it out of Botany Bay. On January 26, 1788, a landing was made at Sydney Cove, according to Phillip's account. The colours were displayed on shore in the evening of the 26th, and the governor, with several of his principal officers and others, drank the king's health and success to the settlement, with all the form that is considered propitious on such occasions, because it enlivens the spirits and fills the imagination with pleasing forebodings. Governor Phillip's voyage to Botany Bay. Despite the arrival of the First Fleet at Sydney Cove on January 26, the colony of New South Wales was not formally established until February 7, 1788, with the proclamation of Phillip's governorship. During the vesting of all land, King George III was the reigning British monarch. According to the New South Wales Almanacs of 1808, immigrants, particularly emancipated convicts, celebrated January 26. On January 25, 1808, drinking and merriment began at sunset. Almanacs have since mentioned First Landing Day or Foundation Day. In 1817, the Sydney Gazette and New South Wales Advertiser reported an unofficial gathering on January 27 to commemorate the anniversary of the colony's establishment under Governor Phillip. Governor Lachlan Macquarie declared the first official celebration a holiday for all government employees the following year. It was known as Foundation Day at the time. The Australian Natives Association, ANA, founded in Victoria in 1871, commemorated January 26 as ANA Day. Except for Adelaide, colonial capitals celebrated Anniversary Day in 1888. By 1910, South Australia had replaced Accession Day, which was celebrated on January 22nd, with Foundation Day on January 26th. Prior to 1888, only the state of New South Wales observed Australia Day on January 26. Australia fought in the First World War as a British Dominion. A committee to commemorate a national holiday was formed with the goal of raising funds for wounded Australian soldiers. From 1915 to 1918, Australia Day was observed to raise funds for the war effort. Australia Day was first observed on July 30, 1915. Victoria designated January 26 as Australia Day in 1931. By 1935, all Australian states had adopted Australia Day. It was still referred to as an anniversary in New South Wales. Some people also continued to use Foundation Day. During World War II, 1939 to 1945, the majority of Australians identified as British. However, the disintegration of the British Empire following the war increased migration to Australia. This shift in non-British migration resulted in the birth of Australian citizenship. Anyone born or naturalised in Australia was considered a British subject prior to 1949. They needed British passports to travel abroad. The British Nationality Act, British Nationality and New Zealand Citizenship Act, and Australian Nationality and Citizenship Act were all enacted in 1948. The South African Citizenship Act was passed the following year. On January 26, 1949, the Nationality and Citizenship Act 1948 went into effect, which included the use of the term Australian citizen in the Constitution. January 26th became an official public holiday in 1994. Australia Day is now both a day of celebration and mourning, a celebration of the First Fleet's founding anniversary and a day of mourning for Aboriginal people whose land was taken away by the colony. In 1988, Aboriginal people in Sydney commemorated the anniversary as a Invasion Day, which destroyed Indigenous culture. Protests take place every year, and sometimes at Australia Day celebrations. According to essential media polls, attitudes towards celebrating Australia Day are changing. Attendance has fallen from 40% in 2019 to 34% in 2021. Furthermore, approximately 53% of respondents considered Australia Day to be a regular public holiday in 2021. Australia Day is a painful and traumatic event for Aboriginal peoples. It reminds them of the consequences of colonization since 1788, as well as the legacy of racial discrimination in contemporary Australian society. According to the First Nations, Aboriginal people, Australia must find a date that includes all Australians. Another group advocates for the abolition of Australia Day as a national holiday. There is nothing to celebrate for them if Aboriginal people continue to face discrimination and injustice. They also claim that the current Australia Day celebration does not reflect the true history of the Aboriginal people. Every state and territory in Australia observes Australia Day as a public holiday. Every year, approximately 13 million Australians take part in celebrations. On this day, streets throughout Australia are lined with Australian flags, symbolizing Australian pride. Festivals, sports competitions, family days, community gatherings, concerts, and fireworks displays are also popular in Australia. Tall ships races, ferry races, flag raising, regattas, and harbour parades are all held in Sydney. Citizenship ceremonies are also common across the country, and many people are approved to become Australian citizens on Australia Day. The Big Day Out and Australia Day Live are annual music festivals that take place around Australia Day. On the eve of Australia Day, major events such as the presentation of the Australian of the Year Awards and the announcement of the Australia Day Honours List take place. The Australian of the Year Award is given to a citizen of Australia who is regarded as a role model and has made significant contributions to the Australian community. Citizen of the Year, Senior Australian of the Year, Young Australian of the Year, Sportsperson of the Year, and Australia's Local Hero are also subcategories. Public nominations for the awards are accepted months in advance of Australia Day. The Australia Day National Council accepts nominations from the general public. Grants will be made available in 2019 for new activities that build on Australia Day community celebrations. During Australia Day, Brisbane residents can enjoy live music, interactive art, and fireworks. Perth hosts the world's largest annual fireworks display. The city of Yarran in Victoria, Australia, and the city of Diribi decided in August 2017 that they would no longer hold citizenship ceremonies on January 26. Instead of celebrating Australia Day, the aforementioned districts will hold events honouring Aboriginal culture.